Hello and welcome back everyone, we Weeb online, and today I'm gonna continue the story What If Naruto Became a Gangster Part 2. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and to watch more videos like this, subscribe to my channel and turn that bell notification on so you never miss an upload. Now wasting no more time, let's begin.
Hinata sat quietly watching Naruto sleep. She happened to run into him here by chance. She spent the entire night and part of this morning attempting to climb a tree using her chakra. She did everything she could to better herself, all in memory of the blonde-haired boy who would stop at nothing to become the Hokage. Hinata liked him because of his strong determination and carefree attitude. It is unnecessary to describe how shocked she was when she discovered he had fled to the local Boryokuden after failing the graduation exam. She had lost faith in Naruto and, soon after, in herself. Her father, who was unaware of Hinata's crush on the Kyuubi host, noticed her sudden anguish, but paid little attention to it. After all, she was no longer the Hyuga clan's heir. Instead, it was Hanabi, her sister. When Hinata learned she had lost her title as clan heiress, she resolved to go to any length to reclaim it. In that sense, she adopted Naruto's demeanor, determination, and devotion. Hinata found it comforting to see him training hard despite the fact that he had betrayed Konoha and fled to the Kurohi Syndicate. In fact, Hinata observed no discernible change in his personality. There was no evil desire, no criminal mind, no dark cunning. He was still Naruto, with the exception of a scar on his right cheek. She thought the scar made him more rugged. Hinata smiled cheerfully as the boy slept. How many times had she secretly watched him train only to see him collapse on the ground from exhaustion? It gave Hinata a sense of nostalgia. Hinata became aware of someone entering the clearing. Hinata had to flee before the person noticed her. She turned to run, but her coat became entangled in a bush branch. She yanked, but she couldn't get it free from the branch's grasp. She had no choice but to abandon the coat before vanishing into the forest. Naruto did not enjoy the second part of the training. The nature of the lesson was explained by Keitaro. Hit a moving target. Naruto's mind was at ease because he expected it to be similar to the previous one. What Keitaro failed to mention was the target's overall size. It was just leaves, small leaves. "You want me to hit leaves?" sarcastically asked Naruto as Keitaro gathered a pile into his hands. "Yes, the goal of this lesson is to teach you how to control the power of your strike," Keitaro said as he placed the pile on the ground. Keitaro takes a package from his cloak. Kitsune and another katana were revealed when he unwrapped it. It was different from the one Keitaro had used the day before. It was less rusted and more refined, with a silver tint to the blade that gave it a ghostly appearance. A string was tied to a golden V at the tip of the hilt. "I don't normally use my katana for this kind of thing," Keitaro admitted almost sheepishly. "In fact, I hardly ever use this katana at all." Keitaro gathered a handful of leaves and tossed them into the air. He thrust the blade at each leaf with ease, raising the sword to his right. As the blade made contact, the leaves split in half. Keitaro's movements were not as fluid or graceful as Hashi's, much to Naruto's surprise. They appeared almost brutish, focused on doing damage rather than avoiding attack. "All right, Naruto, your turn," Keitaro said as he stepped to the side. Naruto drew his katana and approached Keitaro's position. Naruto imitated the man by throwing a handful of leaves into the air. Naruto aimed for the leaf closest to the ground with Kitsune in his hand. Naruto was able to cut the leaf neatly in half in a blur of motion. Unfortunately, he did not fare well with the other leaves. The remaining leaves danced around his blade, avoiding every stroke he made. "Well, you hit one," Keitaro said. "I don't understand," Naruto said. "Why did they keep moving away?" "You didn't attack fast enough," Keitaro explained. "Because if you don't swing fast enough, the wind will knock the leaf out of your blade's path. If you swing too fast, you'll lose control of the blade's path, and who knows what you'll hit." "Right, so I have to control how hard I strike," Naruto realized. He grabbed another handful of leaves from the pile and tossed them up in the air. He raised his katana once more, reminding himself to keep his attack under control. This pattern continued throughout the day. Keitaro stood to the side and offered Naruto advice. The sun started to set, its last golden rays fading from the sky. Stars began to appear, signaling the end of the day. Naruto sat beneath an oak tree, Kitsune in his arms. He was tired from the day's training, so his breathing was quick and shallow. "Are you ready to go back?" Keitaro inquired. He extended a hand to Naruto, who graciously accepted it. The blonde nodded his response, too tired to force the words out. As they walked out of the clearing, Naruto sighed in defeat. It bothered him that he was making no progress. Sure, he tried his hardest to keep his attack under control, but the effort was futile. Whatever he tried, it seemed he could only hit one leaf if he was lucky. Perhaps there was more to it than that. Did he overlook something? He couldn't have done it. "Hey, can we eat something?" A loud rumbling echoed from within Naruto's stomach, and he remembered he hadn't eaten anything since breakfast. Keitaro replied stiffly, sure. He appeared to be nervous about something. His eyes were far away, but his hands were twitching furiously. Even his bad leg was spasming uncontrollably. Are you okay? Naruto inquired, concerned. Keitaro appeared frail for a brief moment. Keitaro nodded and reached into his cloak for a cigarette. He quickly lit it and took a long drag. His hands stopped twitching and his body relaxed almost immediately. He sighed heavily and let the fumes escape his lungs, filling the air with their rancid odor. When the cigarette was almost finished, Keitaro tossed it aside and said calmly, I'm fine. So you want ramen, right? Naruto's face lit up when he heard the words. He had no idea why, but ramen had done that to him. Perhaps he was addicted to it. Forgetting about Keita's minor seizure, they arrived at the outskirts of town just as the sun set. The village streets were still dark, with only the dim glow of various restaurants and stores lighting the way. To protect themselves from the night's cold, the poor of the village began crawling into alleys and using whatever they could find as shelter. They entered a small restaurant on the side of the street after witnessing the depressing sight of poverty. It was cleaner than the others and smelled like freshly prepared food. A sign near the entrance read, "Protected by Gadu Corp," which explained why the restaurant was mostly empty except for a waitress and a man sitting at the bar. At first glance, he appeared to be admiring the wine collection behind the counter, but closer inspection revealed that he had actually fallen asleep upright, possibly due to the abundance of sake and cheap booze around him. Oh, customers, the waitress welcomed them. Why don't you two take a seat while I get you some menus? Naruto and Keitaro took a seat in a corner booth as the waitress rummaged through the counter for menus. She reappeared seconds later, holding napkins, a salt and pepper shaker, plates, soy sauce, and water cups, and saying, I'll just be a minute. She went into the kitchen, leaving the two alone, except for the drunk, who snored loudly. Naruto began poring over the menu, and the first section he went to was the list of ramen. As he read the seemingly endless list, Naruto's mouth filled with drool, shrimp, chicken, beef, pork, miso, turkey, soy, sweet, egg, cream of chicken and beef, tuna, wonton, roasted chicken, roasted beef, lemon and salmon, fish, broiled egg and pork, ham. He was in heaven. Not even Ikaraku had such a diverse selection of ramen. Naruto began to realize why Gadu had placed it under his protection. Naruto perused the rest of the menu, noticing a variety of rare delicacies such as broiled Angus steak, shrimp cocktail, roasted lobster, sauteed chicken, Italian spaghetti, fried rice, jerked pork, grilled pork strips, roasted squid, and so on. Naruto couldn't even begin to read the menu because it was written in another language. How could a restaurant in the middle of town produce so many delicious dishes? Naruto became immobile. The dreadful feeling of being watched crept over him. He didn't have to look out the windows to notice, but his reading aloud of the menu drew a lot of unwanted attention from the poor people outside. He dropped the menu and tossed it aside, drawing unwanted stares from the villagers who already appeared to be staring at him. What motivated them to act in this manner? Were they so hungry that they had to look on in envy as others ate? It was both unsettling and guilt-inducing. Wait here, Keitaro said, noticing the growing presence. He rose from his seat, his face expressionless and businesslike. Keitaro went outside and began conversing with the customers gathered there. Naruto watched as they gradually became more excited before scattering wildly. Keitaro returned to the restaurant and took his place across the table. What did you tell them? Naruto inquired, his curiosity piqued. A straightforward business arrangement, Keitaro replied quietly. Before Naruto could ask any further questions, the waitress appeared and said, Sorry about that, gentleman. May I take your orders? Yeah, I'll have the pork ramen with the fried shrimp, exclaimed Naruto. She nodded and scribbled the order in a notebook before turning to Keitaro and asking, And you, sir? Some steak and spaghetti, Keitaro replied flatly. As an excited group entered the restaurant, the waitress took the menus and disappeared into the kitchen. Thank you so much, exclaimed one of the newcomers as she approached Keitaro. Keitaro smiled and nodded politely. The man turned and rushed over to join his fellow customers. What was that all about? Naruto inquired of Keitaro, who was now holding a cigarette between his fingers. I made them an offer, and they loved the idea, Keitaro explained. So, what was the offer? Naruto inquired. Before Keitaro could respond, the waitress appeared and placed the food and steak on the table before disappearing. I told them to gather their family and friends and eat whatever they wanted, Keitaro replied proudly. And I would handle all the expenses in exchange for their loyalty. Naruto could see Keitaro's point of view. It all made sense. These people appear to have gone without food for days, if not weeks, and it would be cruel to ignore them. And who would have guessed? Perhaps having the loyalty of a few people in this village isn't such a bad thing. At least, Naruto thought so until he saw the large groups of people who entered. Before rejoining their family and friends, 1 or 2 people would respectfully bow to Keitaro and offer their undying loyalty. The restaurant's sole waitress was forced to run up and down the restaurant getting and giving everyone their orders. She exited the kitchen every few minutes, holding a large number of plates in her hands, and quickly returned once another table's orders were ready. This time, as she was leaving the kitchen, she tripped over a patron's extended leg and fell to the ground. Keitaro reached out and grabbed her hand, stopping her fall. "Thank you," she said, "but I'm sorry for spilling the juice on you." "It's fine," Keitaro said, reaching for a napkin to wipe the squeezed liquid from his pants. "Oh, let me get that," she quickly said, taking the napkin from his grasp and attempting to clean his pants. When she realized Keitaro was still holding the napkin, she quickly released it and apologized. "I'm sorry." "I said it's okay," Keitaro said again. "Do you need help cleaning up the mess on the floor?" When she saw the splattered food, the waitress squeaked and dashed into the kitchen to get some mops. Naruto claimed her face turned cherry red before she vanished. "Was she blushing?" he asked, leaning across the table. Keitaro remained silent once more. Instead, his face turned a light pink color. He'd been avoiding questions lately. Naruto sat in his chair, pondering why he did this. Was Keitaro attempting to conceal something? Or was it simply too embarrassing to discuss? He decided it was best not to think about it because it was probably something Naruto didn't need mentally scarring him. Instead, he began eating his ramen and took comfort in the fact that no one was watching him eat enviously. The atmosphere in the restaurant became quite lively. Every few minutes, one of the customers cheerfully proposed a toast to Keitaro for his generosity, to which everyone gladly agreed. Before leaving, 1 or 2 people would separate from the rest to thank the man. Naruto couldn't help but smile when he saw all the fun. He wasn't wearing his usual cheerful smile from Konoha. No, it was an honest smile. Zabuza burst through the door, dressed casually in a black tank top and sweatpants. "Zabuza, what's the matter? Why was he here?" Naruto wondered. The man monster looked left and right before pushing his way through the crowd to the table Naruto and Keitaro were sitting at. They stepped aside to let him walk after the patron noticed him and his dangerously large sword. Despite the sense of danger that this man exuded, no one seemed to mind because they were too busy enjoying their first meal in a long time. Zabuza gently unhitched his sword from his back and placed it against the table. He took a seat beside Naruto and glared angrily at Keitaro. Naruto had forgotten how terrifying Zabuza was up close, especially after the man tried to choke him the day before. His presence sent shivers up Naruto's spine. "So you finally made it?" Keitaro asked quietly, his face solemn. "What took you so long?" "Never mind what took me," Zabuza snarled. "If you wanted to talk privately, why did you choose such a crowded place?" "Because crowded places are usually loud. No one will hear us if we speak quietly," Keitaro explained. Keitaro sipped his sake and took a bite of his spaghetti. He handed the bottle to Zabuza and asked calmly, "Sake?" "I'll pass," Zabuza said sternly. Keitaro nodded and replaced the bottle next to his plate. Naruto ate his noodle quietly while watching the two men. They were locked in a stare-down, like two ferocious animals about to slaughter each other. Despite the cheerful mood around them, the air became extremely tense. "Are you going to tell me what this is about?" demanded Zabuza. A simple question, phrased submissively while retaining its ferocity. "We all know that times change," Keitaro said calmly as he ate his spaghetti. "And every 10 or so years, the bad blood must be squeezed out so the body can survive." "Get to the point," Zabuza said in response to Keitaro's cryptic remark. Clearly, Zabuza disliked metaphors and preferred to get right to the point. Given the size of the sword he wielded, it made sense. "I'd like you to teach Naruto how to use his chakra to become a better swordsman," Keitaro stated flatly. Naruto spit out his ramen and stared in disbelief at his bodyguard. Was he for real? Zabuza was insane. "In exchange, we can permanently put an end to your Gato problem." Keitaro cleared his throat and took a large gulp of sake. "Are you going to kill him?" Zabuza inquired, hopeful. "No, but not far away," Keitaro said, shaking his head. "No," Zabuza replied. Naruto never expected to be consoled by those words. Zabuza terrified him, despite his refusal to admit it openly. Besides, anything involving him, Zabuza, and swords was bound to end in disaster. "I'm sorry to hear that," Keitaro sighed, "but it would be a shame if the Kiri-nin discovered your little hideout." When Zabuza heard these words, he looked at Keitaro. The tension between the two was rising, and flashes of murderous intent began to plague Naruto's heightened senses. It was simply a matter of who wanted to kill who. It wasn't a particularly good question, but it was a question nonetheless. Zabuza reached for his sword slowly, and Naruto realized what he was about to do. He reached for Kitsune, but a metal clang informed him that it was too late. The other customers let out several gasps. He slowly turned his head to see Keitaro pointing his katana at Zabuza. Naruto realized it was deja vu. Fear followed in the wake of the cheerful mood. Everyone came to a halt to watch the events between Keitaro and Zabuza. Even the drunk awoke to watch with perplexed interest. Keitaro smirked at Zabuza and exclaimed cheerfully, "Aijutsu." "Aijutsu," Naruto said confidently. The speed was out of this world. Excited by Keitaro's performance, Naruto casually inquired, "Are you going to teach me that too?" Keitaro seemed to ignore him, which Naruto could understand. After all, given the current situation, it was bad timing. "I'm going to ask you to let go of the sword," Keitaro said slowly as he raised his katana to Zabuza's chin. "Fine, I'll train the brat, but you better keep your end of the bargain," Zabuza said as he clenched his fist around the handle of his sword. "But you better keep your end of the bargain." "Of course, meet us at our inn tomorrow around 10 a.m., Keitaro said, resheathing his katana beneath his cloak. The tense air between them gradually dissipated, and an uneasy calm took its place. In fact, the air became almost lighter. Zabuza stood up and exited the room, all the while being watched by the customers. Everyone resumed their previous activities once he had left. "It appears that you have another teacher," Keitaro stated matter-of-factly. Naruto had no idea what to make of it. On the one hand, he was about to gain a new perspective on the art of Kenjutsu. On the other hand, he was about to learn from the world's largest megalomaniac. One question, however, remained unanswered. He told Zabuza, "We can permanently solve your Gato problem," but he didn't say how. More importantly, why was Keitaro so eager to train with Zabuza? What exactly was Keitaro up to? Naruto was missing something in this picture, but what was it? The next morning, Keitaro and Naruto awoke around 8 a.m. They dressed themselves after a quick breakfast of pickled rice balls and a quick bath. As Naruto tucked his head into his shirt, he noticed Keitaro wasn't wearing his cloak and rice hat as he had done the day before. On the contrary, he dressed in a black business suit with the collar of his dress shirt propped open. In fact, Keitaro seemed to prioritize keeping the collar open so he could show off his dragon tattoo on his neck. But didn't he wear the cloak and rice hat because he didn't want his Yakuza status to be known? Naruto was tempted to inquire, but he knew Keitaro would refuse. Instead, Naruto preoccupied himself with tying Kitsune around his waist. Before grabbing his katana, Keitaro adjusted his collar several times. When Naruto and Keitaro walked out of the inn, they were greeted by Zabuza and Haku. When Naruto saw the ninja swordsman, he flinched. Zabuza appeared to be bored and slightly irritated, whereas Haku simply chose to hide his face behind a mask. Zabuza unwrapped the bandages around his face, revealing shark-like teeth beneath, heightening his already terrifying stature. Zabuza was still upset about yesterday, as far as Naruto could tell. What person wouldn't be? A Kirigaki master shinobi swordsman beaten by a low-life gangster. In the legitimate shinobi world, such a disgrace would never be tolerated. But, according to popular belief, Zabuza was no longer a legitimate ninja for Kirigaki. He was a criminal, a Nukenin, and disobeying the Kuroihi after they had been kind enough to hide him would not benefit him. Besides, as Zabuza knew and Naruto had yet to realize, this particular gangster was more than just a face with a sword. "Where are you going all dressed up?" Zabuza growled, his gaze drawn to Keitaro's katana with a mix of curiosity and frustration. "Perhaps," Keitaro shrugged, "train Naruto in the woods, making sure Gato's men don't see you together. We can't afford to give him any impressions right now. He may not look like Mu. Are these precautions really necessary?" Zabuza interjected. "What if Gato discovers it? What can he do? Send some of his bandits after us." "Gato isn't the type of person to make rash assumptions," Keitaro retorted. "He takes all necessary precautions before making his move. If we can keep a low profile, we won't arouse any suspicion." Zabuza clenched his teeth, enraged by the truth behind Keitaro's words. Zabuza, irritated by Keitaro's obvious superiority, decided to divert the conversation by saying, "You still haven't answered my question. Where are you going?" Keitaro finally responded, "I'm going for a walk." Naruto's jaw dropped open in shock. Was Keitaro insane for leaving him with a crazy man and a cross-dresser? Keitaro, on the other hand, did offer to feed half the village. Naruto remembered the bill's length and found it difficult to believe that so many zeros were possible. Fearing for his health, Naruto hurriedly inquired, "Would it be okay if I came along?" No, Keitaro almost yelled. "I'm going to take a look at some things going on around town. And you need to train with Zabuza here?" He sighed. but Naruto sensed Zabuza's cold stare assessing him. No buts, Keitaro warned, raising his voice. Just go with Zabuza, you'll be safer with him than with me. Naruto wanted to tell Keitaro about the irony, but he was too afraid of Zabuza to say anything. Instead, he nodded dejectedly. Keitaro turned around and walked away into the crowd, satisfied. Naruto noticed that the villagers were treating Keitaro differently. They treated Keitaro the same way they treated Hashi-sensei when he escorted Naruto home from the Konoha. They stepped out of his way, trying to avoid his gaze. They treated him as if he were a disease, and no one dared to approach him. Alright brat, the next few hours will be nothing but misery for you, Zabuza chuckled as Keitaro walked away. They went deep into the woods outside the village until the foliage became dense, and the sun was blocked out. It was remote and deafeningly quiet. The buzz of wildlife around them had died down. The birds ceased to chirp, the leaves ceased to rustle, and the wind ceased to blow. Even the sun's rays struggled to penetrate the dense canopy of tree branches above. Naruto was alone in the woods, surrounded by 2 rogue shinobi. No one would ever know if Haku or Zabuza decided to kill him. Alright, boy, Zabuza grumbled. This is far enough. Zabuza took a look inside his kunai pouch. Naruto's hand moved cautiously towards his katana. If Zabuza obtained a weapon, he could probably defend himself by blocking any attacks. But there was no way Naruto would survive if he went on the offensive. If things deteriorated, his best option was to flee to the village. Take this boy, Zabuza said as he tossed a card at him. Naruto let go of Kitsune and grabbed it in his hands. It was empty, with no writing or images. Nothing significant was written on it. Naruto, perplexed, turned to Zabuza and inquired, "What is this?" "It's a special card that will tell us what chakra type you have. All you have to do is focus your chakra into the card," Zabuza explained. Naruto frowned at the instructions. His time at the academy had little effect on his ability to shape chakra. He knew what he was supposed to do, but Iruka-sensei and Mizuki-sensei were always critical of how much chakra he squandered. They frequently commented on his lack of focus and chakra control. Naruto paused too long, and an irritated Zabuza exclaimed, "Today." Shocked, Naruto immediately focused his chakra on the small card. The blue energy encircled the small card, twisting and turning into various shapes and forms. It was almost like a deformed dance. Naruto directed more of his chakra into the card, focusing solely on his chakra and the card in his hand. His head began to ache horribly. How much longer could he keep doing this? Was he really this bad at chakra molding? Perhaps he was getting rusty due to a lack of proper training. But wasn't he doing it for a reason? The card then split into 2 separate pieces. Naruto groaned at his misfortune. Why was it that this only happened to him? "Wind chakra," Zabuza said. Naruto looked perplexed at Zabuza. "This should be interesting," Zabuza said to Haku, ignoring Naruto. "Quite, though he's not particularly skilled at chakra control," Haku added, to get a better view of the terrain. The cross-dresser sat himself on a tree branch high above the 2. "Give me your katana, boy," Zabuza commanded Naruto. The blonde quickly obeyed Zabuza's command, pulling the sword from its scabbard and handing it to him. Zabuza flipped the katana over in his hands, carefully inspecting it. After a few moments, Zabuza returned the katana, saying, "There's more to this katana than meets the eye, isn't there? It can absorb chakra." "Can it?" Naruto asked as Zabuza handed back the weapon. For some reason, the sword felt heavier in his hand. He was still intrigued by its ability to absorb chakra. Naruto began directing all of his chakra into the katana, hoping for something to happen. Kitsune, like the card, was engulfed in the blue glow of his own chakra. Naruto smiled slightly, pleased to see the katana's ability in action. Kitsune took on the color of royal purple due to the red tint of the blade and the blue glow of the chakra. Then it began to shake violently in his grip. Had it taken on its own life? Naruto wrapped both of his hands around the hilt, attempting to stop it. Kitsune, on the other hand, appeared to have other plans. "No," a deep voice growled angrily. He had previously heard the voice. But how did it get there? Who, more importantly, said it? A bright flash blinded him, and a strong gust of wind threw him back. He felt a piercing sensation on his left arm and a sharp pain in his back. Naruto found himself lying on the ground as the world faded back into view. He sat up, surprised to see Zabuza standing perfectly still, albeit amused. Haku chuckled quietly up in the tree. "It appears to have rejected your chakra," Zabuza observed. "What? I don't get this complicated stuff. Could you make it easier?" Naruto rubbed his back to relieve the burning sensation. "Tell me, did you drop out of the academy or did they kick you out for being so stupid?" Zabuza groaned. "What is that supposed to mean?" retorted Naruto angrily. Your katana was made to recognize a specific chakra signature. When it was infused with your chakra, it reacted violently and activated a defense mechanism. In this case, it shot your chakra back at you. A lot of it, I might add, Zabuza scoffed. With so much chakra, he may not be hopeless after all. Haku apparently decided now was the time to add. Is there a way to make the katana accept my chakra if it rejects it? Naruto wondered. There is, Zabuza smirked, but it will be painful. Another lump had formed in Naruto's throat. What was Zabuza's relationship with pain and misery like? Was he a tyrant? However, he hung out with a cross-dresser, so perhaps he was into Naruto immediately erased any thought he had from his mind. He needed to concentrate on convincing Kitsune to accept his chakra. He'd never be able to master his katana otherwise. Aside from that, that was sick and disgusting. If you want your katana to accept your chakra, you must first fill it with your own, Zabuza explained. Pump it full of my chakra, said Naruto, scratching his chin. All weapons can hold a finite amount of chakra, which varies from weapon to weapon. When they're made to recognize one set chakra signature, it means someone infused their own chakra into the weapon's material. However, if you put enough of your own chakra into the weapon, you can force the other's chakra out and permanently break the defense mechanism. In that regard, it made sense. However, there was one flaw in Zabuza's solution. What about the defense mechanism? Won't it just keep shooting my own chakra back at me? Naruto wondered. Didn't I say it'd be painful? Zabuza retorted gleefully. So that was the only option. To advance in Kenjutsu, he needed to make Kitsune recognize him as his master. If that's what it took, then he'd do it. Naruto began focusing his chakra into the katana without hesitation. The blue energy enveloped the katana again, and it began to shake violently. Naruto gripped Kitsune tighter, attempting to calm its resistance to his chakra. The katana began to numb his hands as it shook violently. In fact, it appeared that the katana was attempting to free itself from Naruto's grasp. A beam of chakra shot out of the katana and nailed Naruto square in the chest, just like before. The unfortunate academy failure landed with a thump after hitting a rock with his buttocks. Naruto screamed in agony, clutching his chest and buttocks. He couldn't decide which hurt more, his wounds or his pride. He rose to his feet and reacquired his katana. A chuckle escaped Zabuza's lips, an amused chuckle, full of joy derived from the misery of others. It reawakened long-buried memories in Naruto's mind. He despised that kind of laugh, but his time in Konoha had taught him one thing. Retaliation was futile. If he wanted to avenge himself, he had to show those who mocked him how wrong they were. And he did it in this manner. He persisted in his training despite how difficult, painful, and exhausting it was. Naruto began refocusing his chakra on the katana. As he did so, the dark voice reappeared, coldly commanding, "Never." The katana began to shake again and shot Naruto's chakra back at him. For a while, Naruto would channel his chakra into the katana, and the katana would shoot the chakra back at him. But that didn't deter him. There was no break in the pattern until Keitaro arrived around noon with a paper bag. He had a cigarette in his mouth, which he discarded, and asked, "How's the training going?" "Bad," Naruto replied. Zabuza nodded quietly, while Haku kept an eye out. "Has he made any progress?" Keitaro groaned. "No," Zabuza said sarcastically. "What is that?" He wondered, looking at the bag in Keitaro's hand. "Lunch," Keitaro said as he sat down and took some salted rice balls from his bag. "Take a break, Naruto." "Lunchtime." "Sure," Naruto said, panting. Kitsune was gently replaced in its scabbard, and he joined Keitaro, who was already eating a rice ball. They ate quietly, Zabuza and Haku repeatedly declining Keitaro's invitations to join them. Instead, they preferred to talk quietly off to the side. A gentle breeze blew, which helped Naruto cool down. Although Naruto denied it, he was perspiring profusely. Keitaro then took a water bottle and a bottle of sake from his bag. Naruto gratefully accepted the water. The salted rice balls had made his throat dry. Keitaro offered sake to Zabuza, who gratefully accepted, and Haku, who politely declined. Naruto gulped down half of the water bottle before moving on to the remaining rice balls. "No come carino que Sicilia," Keitaro said unexpectedly. Naruto raised an eyebrow in response to Keitaro's words. He knew it was another language, but he couldn't place it. The accent was almost otherworldly in its foreignness. "What language is that?" Naruto inquired, his curiosity piqued. "Nothing," Keitaro said, shaking his head. He went there again, avoiding questions. Naruto was becoming increasingly frustrated by Keitaro's passive demeanor. Keitaro, obviously, was not the type of person who enjoyed making friends or allowing people to get close to him. Why, one might ask, what caused him to be that way? What made him seem so distant? All Naruto could do was wonder about his strange behavior. The score Sofis Amer Idura mi Torito Contro tu a Quor, Keitaro began softly singing. It was lovely and, in a way, poetic. The rhythm was catchy, despite the fact that the words seemed almost made up. Naruto became lost in the song, and his thoughts drifted away, slowly following the melody. Naruto returned to attempting to force Kitsune to accept his chakra after the last of the rice balls had been consumed. The pattern continued as before. Naruto would force his chakra into the katana, which would shoot all of the chakra back in a massive blow, sending Naruto flying into a tree. It was quickly becoming old and obsolete. After Naruto's 5th attempt, Keitaro said, "I'll meet with you 3 later." He crumpled up the paper bag and stuffed it into his empty sake bottle. "Where are you going?" Zabuza inquired, his voice tinged with disdain. "Business," Keitaro replied. "You two just focus on training Naruto while the Gato situation is being worked out. When you're finished, drop Naruto off at our inn and I'll explain some details there." He vanished into the wood's darkness, quietly singing his song. "I don't like him," Zabuza said, shaking his head. Sakura hummed to herself as she ate her dumplings and soybean soup for lunch. For her perfect chakra control, Kakashi-sensei had given her the day off. At least, he did until he asked her to protect the bridge builder and his crew while they completed the bridge. For the most part, everything was fine until some Yakuza, most likely working for the horrible man Gato, appeared and began loitering around. The majority of the workers immediately stopped what they were doing and went home, claiming that certain circumstances prevented them from working in a safe environment. She knew they were referring to the Yakuza. She'd seen it happen on occasion in Konoha. When a citizen did something that enraged a local gang, some of their lower-ranking members, specifically the Basuzoku, would show up and hang out. They made no threats or did anything illegal. The local Boryokuden boss had issued a 1-day warning. The message was straightforward: stop or bad things will happen. Anyone who dared to return the next day either vanished or was discovered dead. But wasn't this the reason they hired Konoha Shinobi in the first place? Some of the workers felt more secure knowing there was a capable Kunoichi nearby to assist them. Others, on the other hand, had no faith in her and left one by one. However, the man had long since left, and construction had resumed at its normal pace. She finished her meal and returned everything to her lunch box. Sakura sat on the bridge's railing and let the cool sea breeze blow through her hair. She adored the salty sea air and the cool mist. "Hello, Sakura," Hinata said as she approached her, holding a lunchbox neatly wrapped in a pink cloth. "Hello," she replied to her teammate. "Did you find your hoodie?" "No," Hinata said, shaking her head. "I'm sorry to hear that," Sakura apologized, "but it was nice too." Hinata's personality has flip-flopped since the graduation ceremony, despite the fact that she hasn't said anything. She used to be withdrawn and secluded, rarely speaking and frequently pressing her fingers together. Hinata, she concluded, was the shy, quiet type. But now that they were on the same team, she discovered how honest Hinata was. Sakura was almost convinced she was behaving like Naruto. She not only had the same upbeat attitude, but she also wanted to prove her strength to others. It just goes to show that outward appearances aren't everything. Fortunately, she didn't have his annoying habit of playing practical jokes on people. They were so similar, it was as if they were long-lost relatives. Who would have guessed? Maybe it was more complicated than that. She laughed at the thought. Who would be interested in Naruto? He was self-centered, brash, rude, and a failure. Why? Because he doesn't have any parents to correct him, no one to tell him he's acting inappropriately. He's completely alone. She pushed these thoughts aside and turned to Hinata, asking, "How did the tree climbing go?" "Good," Hinata replied. "I don't think Sasuke was too happy about trailing the two of us." Sakura frowned as she heard these words. She disliked the thought of an upset Sasuke. It was bad enough that he started snapping at everything after his fight with Naruto 2 days ago. Perhaps she should work harder to get closer to him. She sighed in defeat and quickly ate her lunch. "Looks like a storm is on its way." A dark cloud appeared over the horizon. "Yeah." Hinata's smile slowly inverted. Naruto rose to his feet after being blasted into a tree for the 7th time. His katana seemed hellbent on allowing only its creator's chakra to enter the weapon. It made it impossible to use, and it was harming his young body. He was not only exhausted, but his hands were numb from the chakra channeling. He simply needed to rest. There was no point in overworking himself because there was no rush. When he looked up at the sky, he noticed it was already dark. The stars illuminated the night sky. He rose from the ground, recalling his training. "That's enough for today, boy," Zabuza said as Naruto stood up again. "It's late and you've already exhausted most of your chakra. Any more and you'll die." Naruto was overcome with a mixture of joy and despair. On the one hand, he was no longer committed to spending time with Zabuza. He, on the other hand, did not want to halt his training. Still, the prospect of meeting death was none too appealing. Besides, sleeping on a nice futon was much more appealing than sleeping on the grass. Naruto nodded and picked up Kitsune. After replacing the katana in its scabbard, he followed the Kirin out of the woods. They arrived at the inn to find Keitaro already waiting for them. He casually leaned against the front door, scanning up and down the street until his eyes rested on Naruto, Zabuza, and Haku. He smirked and walked towards them calmly. "How did the training go?" he inquired calmly. He lit a cigarette and blew smoke into the air. "He made no progress whatsoever," Zabuza replied. Naruto turned on Zabuza. "Hey, it's not my fault." Zabuza rolled his eyes scornfully. "Yeah, sure." Keitaro nodded understandingly. "I see. I've worked out the details for my end of the deal. You two just head back to wherever Gato is keeping you. Act natural. Don't give him any reason to be suspicious." Zabuza raised an eyebrow. "What exactly do you have planned?" "I'll save you the finer details and say this. Gato will no longer be of concern by the end of tomorrow," was Keitaro's explanation. He looked from Zabuza to Haku before adding, "Go home and get some rest. You look tired." Zabuza glared suspiciously at Keitaro before he and Haku disappeared into clouds of smoke. Keitaro turned to Naruto and said the same thing. "You don't look so well. Is everything alright?" "Yeah, I'm just tired," Naruto answered. Truth be told, he was anxious to get to bed. He never felt so tired in his life. His body, specifically his hands, ached terribly. He just wanted to go inside and lie down. In fact, he had already stepped past Keitaro and was walking over to the inn. FWOOSH. A large shockwave threw Naruto onto the ground, Keitaro landing next to him. He scrambled onto his feet, only to fall back again at the sight before him. The inn was ablaze, screams and shouts echoing from inside. His mouth hung open in awe, unable to move himself from the ground. He shook horribly, fearfully at the sight before him. If he had gone in just moments earlier, he would have died. Keitaro blindly rushed into the building, only to emerge moments later carrying the injured clerk in his arms. He set her down on the ground before rushing over to Naruto. "Are you alright?" Naruto managed to find the ability to nod. Keitaro lifted him off the ground and quickly said, "I want you to find a place to hide. Stay low and out of sight." Following his orders, Naruto sought shelter in the shadows of a nearby alleyway. He ducked behind a trash can and peered over the side just in time to witness three men in black suits appear. Naruto recognized two of them as Gato's goons, and the third as the drunk from the restaurant. They slowly circled Keitaro, taunting and asking him several questions. With each statement, Keitaro's face would contort between anger and impassiveness. After the three goons had their fill of gloating and cursing, they attacked Keitaro. The first goon dove straight at the Kurohi gangster, who easily dispatched the first with a sharp blow to the stomach with his fist. The second goon retrieved a nunchaku from within his coat and began a swift display of spinning and twirling the weapon around his head. The goon loudly gloated, "Fear me." Keitaro unsheathed his katana and used the scabbard to whack the second goon on the head. The second goon fell to the ground, unconscious. The alcoholic groaned at the failure of his companions and raised his hands into the air. He slowly backed away, putting distance between himself and Keitaro. He then revealed wrist blades from within his suit and charged Keitaro. The distance between Keitaro and the drunk quickly closed. In a flash of movement, Keitaro angled his katana up. The drunk, going too fast to stop, impaled himself. He slumped to the ground, blood pooling itself around his body. Keitaro pulled his blade out of the dead man and wiped it on a white cloth before sheathing it. He wore an expressionless look on his face. It wasn't the business face from last night that was impossible to read. This expression, although intended to mean nothing, hinted malice. Keitaro walked over to the two unconscious goons and reached inside his coat to reveal a wakizashi. Naruto's mouth dropped at what happened next. Keitaro leaned down so he reached each goon and slit their necks. Keitaro let the blood drain with a hint of satisfaction before he wiped the stained blade on the same cloth he wiped his katana on. Naruto realized his mouth was hanging open just as Keitaro put the sword away. He moved with such speed, such skill, that it rivaled a shinobi. His abilities were on another level. What made it worse? Keitaro murdered three men as if it was the most natural thing in the world. There was no show of remorse, no sign of guilt. Only satisfaction as he watched each person die. Keitaro walked his way over to Naruto's hiding place. "Are you okay?" "Yeah," Naruto heard himself say. No, he wasn't okay. What did he just witness? Keitaro was as Naruto had no idea how to respond. If the Yakuza were a Ninkaio Dantai, then how could they kill unremorsefully? Keitaro motioned for Naruto to follow him out of the alley. After the violent display before him, the last thing Naruto wanted to do was piss Keitaro off. The two stepped out onto the street, the burning in casting an eerie glow. Keitaro walked at a fast pace, considering his limp, with Naruto behind and in tow. "We need to move. More of Gatta's goons will be here soon," Keitaro instructed. "Do you still have Kitsune?" Naruto glanced down at the red katana, still tied to his waist. He glanced back at Keitaro and nodded. Keitaro turned his attention away from him. "Good. You'll need it tomorrow." "Hold on. What was that back there? What's going on?" Naruto demanded angrily. "I'll explain later," Keitaro reasoned. "Right now, we need to concentrate in getting somewhere safe." "No," Naruto snapped. He was tired of Keitaro's evasiveness. Forgetting how pissed Keitaro had been moments ago, he angrily said, "You tell me right here and right now. You really want to know? Gato and his gang just declared war. Is that what you wanted to hear?" Keitaro snapped back. The fire in his eyes made Naruto close his mouth. Maybe yelling at Keitaro wasn't such a smart idea. "I'm sorry." Naruto remained silent, too scared and ashamed to say anything to Keitaro. Keitaro noted the silence and added, "Gato must have had a guy plant exploding tags inside the building while our guard was down. Those 3 goons were looking for you and me, so odds are we were the target." Naruto looked up at Keitaro, unable to grasp what he was saying. Did Keitaro mean Gato, the man who was supposed to protect them in this country, was the one trying to kill them? Naruto groaned, defeated. First Konoha, then Hashi Compound, Sensei's, and now here. Was Naruto going to be safe anywhere? Tears started to well in his eyes. Keitaro sighed. "The way we live our lives, kid, the way we do business, is not the kind where you emotions can be worn on your sleeve." Naruto turned to look at him, trying to wipe his face. Keitaro was obviously trying to comfort him, albeit he wasn't doing a goof job of it. Keitaro patted Naruto's head. "Don't worry. Boss Hashi asked me to protect you. You're in good hands." Keitaro led the way through the village's dark streets. There was a stunned silence around them. Despite the fact that it was the middle of the night, half of the village was wide awake. The inn's explosion shook the entire town, and the glow of the fire could be seen from the other side of the village. People around them cast glances at Keitaro and Naruto as they walked by at a quick pace. They were coming to the obvious conclusion: Keitaro had bombed some poor establishment. The fact that Keitaro was dressed in his black suit didn't help matters. All it did was cause unnecessary frightened whispers. They came to a halt on the outskirts of town, just outside an old dilapidated house that looked more like a shack than a house. The wood had peeled and was moldy, and the door was dangling from its hinges. Quickly, Keitaro said as he opened the door and pushed Naruto inside. The interior was far cleaner than the exterior would suggest. It had one room with a kitchen and a table and chairs. There wasn't much to say about the shack other than an old rug on the dusty wooden floor and torn curtains hanging from the broken windows. This shack had clearly been abandoned for a long time. "What brings us here? What is this place?" Naruto inquired of the commode. "It's an old safe house," Keitaro explained as he closed curtains and turned on lights. "However, we haven't used these things since the last Great Shinobi War. We should consider ourselves fortunate that this one has not yet collapsed." "Which one?" Naruto cocked his brow. "Yeah, we have 3 in this village, 4 in the surrounding forest, and 2 in the next village over," Keitaro replied, a little glumly. He rolled the rug over to reveal a hidden door beneath it. The door opened into a dark, bunker-like basement. Naruto pressed his hand against the wall and began searching for a light switch. He found it after a minute of searching and flipped it to the on position. A single light bulb flickered to life, revealing a long-forgotten corridor riddled with mold and grime. Buckets of murky, brown water, as well as mops and towels, were placed in the hall's corner. Someone had obviously attempted to clean the basement earlier, but had done a poor job at best. "We're going to stay quiet here for a while," Keitaro explained. He indicated the first door on the left that is your space. "This afternoon, I moved the majority of your belongings there." Naruto walked into his room and opened the door. To his surprise, it was far superior to the inn's room. There was a bed in the corner of the room, as well as a dresser with a mirror. A small lamp sat on the dresser, dimly lighting the room. In fact, the room appeared to be shrouded in haze. Naruto's bag, along with his cloak and rice hat, lay at the foot of his bed. "If you need me, I'll be in this room," Keitaro said from the doorway. He indicated the second door on the right. "Now get some rest. We'll discuss it in the morning." Keitaro shut the door behind Naruto, leaving him alone in the dim light. Naruto quickly put on his blue pajamas and silly bed hat. He stretched out on the bed and closed his eyes. Despite the day's training, he had trouble sleeping. He looked up at the rotting wood ceiling, wondering how things were supposed to work out. Konoha had labeled him an S-rank criminal, and Gadu's thugs were on the hunt for him and Keitaro. With the current state of affairs, there was little chance of a one-day resolution. He'd been staring at the ceiling for how long? What, 10 minutes, 20, 1 hour, perhaps 3 hours? Naruto's body was too tired to move, but the events of the day had been shocking, if not traumatizing. In this dimly lit room, closing one's eyes could mean death. Still, if he didn't sleep, he'd most likely develop insomnia. Naruto turned to the mirror that hung over the dresser, unable to find the peace of mind he sought. He looked at himself in the mirror for a moment, taking in his appearance. Because of Zabuza's training, he was covered in dirt, with grass stains and scratches adorning his orange garb. His hair was a tangled mess, but isn't it always? Perhaps it was messier. Is it even possible? He then looked into his reflection's blue eyes. There was a mixture of fear, uncertainty, and sorrow there. But Naruto was taken aback by another characteristic. These eyes held a hint of power and ferocity. Were they really his? They were darker and colder than his eyes. They lacked emotion, even life. He averted his gaze from his reflection, unable to bear the sight of himself, and collapsed on his bed. He lay there silently wishing for the warm embrace of sleep. Several sleepless hours passed while Naruto stared blankly at the ceiling. In his sea of worry, his mind swam endlessly back and forth. What would occur? Would he perish? What would happen? Who would do such a thing? Gadu or Konoha? A light knock came on his door. "Wake up, Naruto," Keitaro gently said. Naruto got out of bed and went upstairs because he had nothing better to do. Keitaro placed 2 plates of fried eggs, fried fish and rice, 2 glasses of water, and chopsticks on the table. Naruto sat quietly at the table, staring at his food. "Itadakimasu," Keitaro said as he sat down across from him. Keitaro began to eat his food quickly. Naruto noticed he was still dressed in his black suit, the collar adjusted to show off the dragon tattoo on his neck. Naruto thought it was ironic that he had a dragon tattoo. Wasn't it the Kurohi Syndicate? The Dark Sun? Wouldn't a tattoo of a black sun make more sense? He returned his focus to his plate of food. He wasn't hungry for some strange reason, despite the fact that he hadn't eaten since yesterday afternoon. He even skipped dinner because of last night. Naruto stood up and pushed the plate away from himself. "Is there something wrong?" Keitaro inquired, sensing Naruto's distress. Naruto replied, "I'm not hungry." Keitaro cocked his brow. "At the very least, eat the rice. I need you to be at your best today if we are to solve the Gadu problem." "We?" Naruto inquired, recognizing the word. "We?" Keitaro smirked at his puzzled expression. Keitaro began his lengthy explanation. Naruto was initially hesitant because the plan appeared to be rather blunt. But as Keitaro continued, Naruto gradually realized the true nature of the plan. It was so devious, flawless that it was worthy of legend. It was beautiful, a true masterpiece, a true testament to the Yakuza's nature. And how could he refuse after hearing it? Nonetheless, Naruto was shaken to learn of his pivotal role in Keitaro's plan. His job was so critical that there was no room for error. Everything hinged on how he played his cards. Naruto was filled with both excitement and apprehension. "And that's how it'll play out," Keitaro concluded. "But the big question is, are you in?" In surprise, Naruto's eyes widened. "Of course I'm interested. Do you think I'll let Gadu go after he tried to kill us?" Keitaro's lips curled into a smile. Naruto patiently waited outside the Gadu Corp compound, humming to himself. His katana was tied around his waist. A package neatly wrapped in white cloth was slung over his shoulder. Naruto was surprised to find himself agreeing to Keitaro's plan. He trembled slightly, but remembered Keitaro's words from the night before. "The way we do business is not the kind where you can wear your emotions on your sleeve." He tried to calm himself by closing his eyes and holding his breath. He couldn't show emotion, plain and simple. If things became violent, Naruto would simply have to fight his way out. Half of Gadu's goons, according to Keitaro, were bandits with no skill with a sword. It would be a simple matter to dispatch them. "What exactly do you want?" a voice called out from behind him. When Naruto turned around, he saw a tall, muscular man staring him down. He was dressed in musty robes with his axe latched to his belt, as opposed to the formal suit most wore to conceal their weapons. The man was filled with venom. Naruto swallowed and tried not to panic. Keitaro's instructions entered his mind: remain calm and respectful. If something goes wrong, don't back down. If everything else fails, run. "I want to speak with Boss Gadu," he said as calmly as he could. "Why?" said the man, raising an eyebrow. "Business," Naruto replied. The goon mockingly shook his head. "Good try, kid. What qualities does a brat like you possess that could be considered businesslike?" Naruto made eye contact with the man. Naruto made every effort not to blink. Keitaro's words came to mind, if they make eye contact, don't break it. Don't think about anything that might reveal our plan. Instead, concentrate on something you enjoy, such as ramen. The steaming soup came to mind, its mouth-watering flavors whetting Naruto's appetite. He reached for the white cloth slowly, unwrapping it to reveal Keitaro's katana. The guard's brow furrowed in disbelief. Keitaro told Naruto to expect it but not to react. Appear to be clueless about what's going on while knowing your opponent's next 10 moves. The boss will see you, the guard said as he disappeared into the building. He opened the gate and welcomed Naruto inside. Naruto quickly rewrapped Keitaro's katana before stepping through the gate. Naruto was motioned to follow him inside by the guard. With the exception of the fact that it was busier during the day, not much had changed in the 2 days since he had been there. The 2 secretaries were still working behind their desks, but they were now aided by a group of young women who were assisting them with the paperwork. Several people passed through the lobby, carrying bags, carts, and an assortment of goods. There were several hushed conversations around them about transportation, marketing, and sales, with the occasional personal matter thrown in for good measure. Needless to say, a swarm of guards in casual black lined the lobby's walls. They all openly displayed their weapons. Naruto followed the guard to the highest floor, which was a straight corridor with a single door at the end. The guard knocked on the door and said simply, "Come in." The guard pushed Naruto inside after opening the door. With all of the curtains and blinds closed, the office was pitch black. The scant light that came in revealed a dusty office desk piled high with paper, books, scrolls, and pens. Gato, dressed in black slacks and a yellow dress shirt, was leaning against his desk. He rolled a cigar in his mouth, allowing the stench to fill the room. He was holding his cane and rolling his hand along the diamond atop it. There was a fireplace to the side, but it appeared to be inactive for some time. What drew Naruto's attention was the fireplace. 2 severed arms were nailed to a piece of wood and hung as a trophy for all to see. A small brass plaque beneath the arms read, Kaiza. Okay, Naruto reasoned, I'm in. Keep your cool and don't do anything stupid. Keep to the plan. He exhaled deeply and turned his gaze away from the arms. Before turning to leave, the guard stepped around Naruto and whispered something into Gato's ear. He quietly shut the door behind him. Naruto knelt and bowed as low as his waist would allow, then said formally, "Thank you for seeing me, Boss Gato." Naruto chose to stare at the ground rather than look up. He heard the guard quietly close the door. Gato asked the first question calmly, "Tell me, Naruto, what do I owe this visit?" Naruto raised his head to make eye contact with Gato. Gato's cold gaze seemed to pierce Naruto's eyes, as if he was trying to figure him out. He quickly returned to thinking about ramen, allowing the savory flavor to relax his mind. "I want you to kill Keitaro," he recited slowly. It was said without emotion or hesitation. If Naruto wavered in his demand, Gato would be suspicious. Naruto leaned into a sitting position while still on his knees. His legs began to ache in pain. He despised his Caesar position, but as Keitaro explained, it was a necessary part of the hierarchy. It was both respectful and acknowledged the superiority of the other. Gato's pupils condensed into an icy glare. He growled as he yanked the cigar from his mouth. "What's the point? You come in here with Keitaro's prized katana, expecting me to kill him. What is the point of doing this for you? What gives you the impression that a brat like you can request a hit, especially on the man who saved you's friend?" Gato's words had a cold sharpness to them. Even so, Naruto couldn't let Gato yank his chain. He could fool Gato into believing he was jerking his chain, but if he went too far, Gato would catch on. Naruto lowered his head gradually. He's obnoxious and rude. He has no respect and is an outright jerk. Hashi-sensei promised to train me, but Keitaro keeps ignoring him. He also keeps wandering off, despite the fact that he is supposed to be protecting me. Silence. Naruto was warned to be on the lookout for this. Gato was a calculated man who was always thinking. He was a difficult man to read, but certain cues always hinted at what he was thinking. It was just a matter of correctly reading the tell. Keitaro reasoned that Naruto's ability to catch them had improved. But why should I be the one to take his life? According to what I understand, you know how to use a katana and own one. Second, if you include Keitaro's, you can take his weapon, but you can't take his life. Gato responded. Naruto bit his lower lip and spoke slowly. Naruto would have to flee if the next part didn't sound convincing. His heart began to race, knowing that his next words would either kill him or make him successful. To calm himself, he began to speak slowly. Why would I deprive someone much more deserving of that pleasure? Naruto bowed again, only slightly tilting his head to see Gato's left shoe. Vanity was Gato's Achilles heel. Despite his intelligence, cunning, and caution, pride drew out the worst in everyone. Gato's greatest fear was not only humiliation, but also his self-esteem. Gato didn't tolerate disrespect, but that didn't make his greatest weakness go away, compliments on his arrogance. Gato shifted his weight to the right. When Naruto saw it, he tried hard not to grin. Gato began to laugh quietly. You're more intelligent than you appear. That appeals to me. You should have approached me about this sooner. We might have been able to work something out. Thank you, Boss Gato. Naruto slowly rose. I will accept you as a protege, Gato continued, and I want you to be close to me from now on. From now on, you'll be living the high life. Thank you again, Boss Gato, Naruto said, bowing once more. The prospect of being Gato's protege made his eye twitch. Gato proudly smiled. You're a nice kid. Show me Keitaro's katana now. He grabbed the white cloth and ripped it open as quickly as he could. He handed Gato Keitaro's katana. When he saw the katana in front of him, the short, plump man smiled darkly. Gato took it in his hands and unscabbarded the katana. Gato carefully examined it. Lupara, the famous katana. It is a true design rarity, and it is magnificent. Let's see how strong Keitaro is without his katana. Gato calmly replaced the katana in its scabbard and tied it around his waist. Naruto clenched his teeth, unable to bear the sight of Gato dressed in Keitaro's prized possession. But he knew biting his tongue would be better. He began to think about ramen again, hoping to divert attention away from Gato and toward his fondness for the succulent dish. Unfortunately, Gato interrupted his train of thought by asking, when do you want to deal with Keitaro? Today, Naruto replied, mockingly, he's going down to the bridge to deal with the Konoha shinobi. Kill him there, and the Konoha shinobi will be held accountable. Now, Gato asked, raising an eyebrow. It would be in our best interest to get rid of him as soon as possible, Naruto said, nodding. However, Gato warned once more, allow me to explain something to you. In this situation, there is no hour. My interests should be the only thing that matters to you. Do you get what I'm saying? Naruto bit his lower lip, attempting to conceal his growing dislike for Gato. I apologize, Boss Gato. Please accept my apologies. You're new, Gato reasoned, but don't repeat that mistake. He turned away from Naruto and walked slowly towards the door. Fortunately, my business partners have already arrived at the bridge to deal with the Konoha issue. Let's go for a quick walk, Naruto. I'm looking for some entertainment. Yes, Boss Gato, Naruto replied cheerfully. Gato nodded and reached for his coat as he walked towards the door. He quickly put it on, while Naruto trailed behind him. They went back downstairs into the main lobby. When they saw Gato, the hundreds of guards lining the walls bowed, as did all of the workers. Even the secretaries rose from their seats to prostrate themselves before the man. Is everything in order, boss? Asked the bulky guard Naruto remembered from the gate. Gato nodded and said, yes, and simply going for a walk. Prepare my private boat and prepare the bandits. How many of them are there, boss? The guard inquired inanely. All of them, Gato said with a wicked smile. The guard came to a complete halt. Are you certain? Do you want me to round up some of the guys? You'll be safer if there are at least 10 of us protecting you. No, Gato replied quickly. But since you asked, gather a hit squad and go to the bridge builder's house. He's been a thorn in my side since that son-in-law hero got his due. I'm going to do to him, his daughter, and his brat grandson what I did to Kaiza. Remove him and his family. Yes, sir, the man said, bowing. Naruto turned to face Gato, surprised, and asked calmly, you want to kill civilians. Does that pose a problem? Naruto, winced Gato. Naruto laughed at his own stupidity. He had no right to question Gato's decision. If Naruto gave Gato any reason to believe he didn't respect Gato's authority, Gato would quickly become suspicious of Naruto. I was merely going to point out that your business ventures might suffer losses if you were implicated in the murders, the blonde replied calmly, slowing his breathing. Naruto wished he knew what that meant, but it sounded clever. Gato's face twisted into frustration as a calculating look crossed his face. Naruto tried again to think about ramen, but it didn't work. His face was still flushed with surprise. You're correct, Gato replied. Change in plan. Have those two buffoons, Waraji and Zuri, kidnap the bridge builder's daughter and grandson. He said quickly to the guard. Very good, sir. The guard said again, is there anything else? That's all I've got for now. You have been fired. Gato had finished. The guard bowed once more before walking away. Fortunately, Naruto was fed up with the yes man. It made sense for someone like Gato and his sick pride, though. Gato approached Naruto and patted his shoulder. That's why I like you so much, kid. In this room full of yes men, you're the ideal advisor. It's daring and one of a kind. I appreciate it. Naruto bowed sickly. Thank you, Boss Gato. He didn't want to admit it, but he didn't like the idea of assisting Gato. But as long as it kept him on Gato's good side, he wasn't going to complain. Gato approached the door, Naruto close behind the short burly man. Instead of entering through the main door, they proceeded down a dark, narrow corridor that led outside into a courtyard. The sun was shining brightly on the grounds around midday. The courtyard was beautifully landscaped with a variety of flowers and exotic trees. The courtyard's beauty, however, did not divert attention away from the many armed bandits waiting impatiently. Once Garu and Naruto were in their sights, one of the larger bandits marched right up to Garu and asked, "What is so important that you had to get us all down here so quickly?" Garu smirked deftly, "Relax. We're just going to deal with an obnoxious pest." It would be an understatement to say Sakura was upset. In reality, she was heartbroken and crestfallen. It was supposed to be a routine day. She, Sasuke, Hinata, and Kakashi-sensei were to go to the bridge and keep an eye on the bridge builder while he worked. They didn't expect to find the construction crew beaten to a pulp. Even more surprising were the two rogue nin waiting for them, Zabuza and Haku. Kakashi-sensei immediately directed her and Hinata to protect Tazuna while he and Sasuke dealt with Zabuza and Haku. Just as Sasuke and Kakashi-sensei charged in, a thick fog rolled in. She couldn't hear Sasuke or Kakashi-sensei because of the fog. Only the sound of metal colliding in midair, accompanied by the thwack of a fist colliding with the face, followed by pain grunts. When the fog lifted, a frail Zabuza and Kakashi-sensei were still exchanging punches, while Haku stood over a defeated Sasuke. She cringed, horrified to see the love of her life lying motionless. She wanted to believe he was simply unconscious at first, but she noticed he wasn't breathing. She forgot about Tazuna, Hinata, Zabuza, Kakashi, and Haku in that split second. She wanted to run to Sasuke and rescue him from the jaws of death. But she knew she couldn't abandon the bridge builder. Why did she agree to the mission? Why didn't she object? She sank to her knees, unable to bear the loss, and began to sob uncontrollably. Unfortunately, Haku and Zabuza had been looking for that moment of weakness. Both Zabuza and Haku charged blindly past the weeping Sakura and straight towards the bridge builder. Sakura realized the cost of her mistake 1 second too late, and turned around just in time to see Hinata throw herself in the path of Zabuza and Haku's attack. When Zabuza's monstrous sword ripped Hinata in half, Sakura's jaw dropped to the ground, allowing Haku to go straight for Tazuna. Haku turned into a cloud of smoke just as he was about to thrust a fistful of kunai into the elderly man. Zabuza and Haku were stunned to discover the old man had been transformed into a block of wood. "Sakura, return to our original position," Kakashi screamed from the other side of the bridge. Sakura turned to see Hinata clutching a surprised Tazuna. She breathed a sigh of relief as she realized Hinata had used a substitution to protect herself and the bridge builder. She almost laughed at her error, but she was still too upset about the death of one Sasuke Uchiha. She ran towards her team, wiping her hot tears away with the back of her hand. Sakura apologized weakly. "I'm sorry, Kakashi-sensei." Kakashi slung Sasuke's limp body over his shoulders, dismissing Sakura's apology and declaring, "Don't even think about it. We need to return to the village." "I'm afraid you're not going anywhere," a cold, familiar voice said. Sakura spun on her heels but quickly regretted it. A horde of bandits stood behind them, armed to the teeth with their weapons. The Dark Garu and a surprised Naruto stood before this mob. But how did they get there? The mob gathered on the unfinished side of the bridge, which hung over a wall of water. Had they ascended? How? To get there, they would have needed a boat. "No, not now," groaned Kakashi. "Kakashi-sensei," Sakura inquired of her Jonin squad leader. His expression was a mix of awe and exasperation. "I'm sorry, Minato-sensei," he mumbled quietly. Naruto blinked in surprise. On his back, Kakashi carried a limp Sasuke. In fact, Sasuke didn't appear to be breathing. Was he dead? Naruto couldn't say Sasuke didn't deserve it, but he was disappointed to learn that the man he despised the most had been beaten by someone other than himself. Maybe some collateral damage. Naruto couldn't accept it. If Sasuke was to die, it would be at Naruto's hands, not anyone else's. He also had a pretty good idea who did it. It was unfortunate that he couldn't do anything about Sasuke. His gaze was drawn to Kakashi, who was in a daze. His face was expressionless, as if he didn't know what to do next. He then turned to face Sakura. Her red eyes proved only one thing: she had been crying. Naruto's suspicions were confirmed. Sasuke was dead and gone. Then he looked at Hinata, who seemed unconcerned until she noticed Naruto was staring at her. Naruto raised an eyebrow as she made a strange expression that alternated between a kind smile and an evil glare. He pushed this aside, remembering that he had to stick to Keitaro's plan. Garu took a step towards Kakashi, and his Genin team Yukanoha shinobi are truly pitiful, walking into a trap like this. "And what about you, Zabuza? Have a third-rate shinobi and a team of brats proven to be too much for you?" Zabuza snarled at the obnoxious man. Garu shook his head and said, "That is truly unfortunate. Keitaro isn't here, so the coward must have fled." Trash that serves no purpose. Gato looked at Naruto and said, "What are your thoughts, Naruto? Should we murder them?" I believe Naruto began. This was the riskiest part of Keitaro's plan. It was all coming together. If everything went well, he'd be out of here in no time. "I think you're the biggest fool I've ever met." "What?" Gato exclaimed. Naruto drew Kitsune from its scabbard and stabbed Gato in the chest with a swift wave of his sword. This was the end of the road. From here, it was all or nothing. Gato recoiled backwards, still unable to comprehend what had occurred. Naruto took his katana from Gato's chest and severed the thread that held Lupara to Gato's waist. It landed with a thud on the ground. Naruto snatched the silver katana and tucked it into his jacket. He dashed to the bridge's edge and began climbing over the railing. Gato let out a pained wail, followed by a sharp, "Get that brat." Once on the other side of the bridge, Naruto turned to face Kakashi and his team. "I'm sorry about Sasuke," he apologized as he replaced Kitsune in its scabbard. Naruto jumped off the bridge backwards, just in time to avoid the bandits. As he fell faster to the water below, his heart raced. The height of the fall assured him of one thing: the landing would be excruciatingly painful. He positioned himself so that he would fall flat on his belly and began scanning the water for a boat. He fell faster and faster. What happened to that boat? He scanned the entire body of water until he noticed a small rowboat approaching him. He grinned as he jumped into the raging river, splashing water high into the air. If Naruto was correct about anything, it was the agony of falling. The impact was hard on his body, and he took a second to recover before starting to swim towards the surface. Unfortunately, Kitsune and Lupara's katanas were heavier underwater. Naruto could feel an enormous weight attempting to drag him down. He kicked his feet as hard as he could, attempting to push his aching body to the surface. Unfortunately, the pressure of the depth began to wear on his lungs, and he desperately needed to breathe. He couldn't stay underwater indefinitely. Air. He required air. Water began to enter his mouth, followed by foamy bubbles of air. He pushed himself harder and harder, desperate to get out of the water. He surfaced with a gasp for air, flailing his limbs wildly to stay afloat. He looked around and noticed a rowboat paddling alongside him. A hand reached out and firmly grasped his arm, yanking him out of the water and onto the small vessel. To regain his bearings, Naruto coughed and hacked furiously. Water sprayed from his mouth, and he felt a warm blanket wrap around his freezing, soaked form. Naruto yanked the two katanas off himself, taking deep breaths to give his body the oxygen it desperately needed. "Are you okay, Naruto?" asked Keitaro reassuringly. Naruto bowed. "Yeah, I'm perfectly fine." "How did you find it?" Keitaro inquired, wrapping his arms around Lupara like an old friend. Naruto shivered before responding. "Everything went as planned. Gato came all the way out here with us. He's no longer alive." "You did well, Naruto," Keitaro said calmly. He grabbed two oars and began paddling the small boat back to shore. Naruto sat quietly in his room, still astounded by the results of Keitaro's scheme. A week had passed since Gato's assassination and Naruto's fake suicide. Keitaro reasoned that if Konoha believed Naruto was dead, they would revoke his S-rank status. To that end, he was to remain hidden until the Konoha nin had left. With the assistance of Zabuza and Haku, the Konoha nin were able to successfully dispatch the bandits. Zabuza was killed in the ensuing melee as a result of the fatal wound inflicted on him by Kakashi prior to Gato's arrival. He couldn't take on so many opponents at once due to his weakened state. His demise was swift and painless. Without a master and no other purpose, Haku turned to the only people he knew he could trust, Naruto and Keitaro. Despite the fact that the two of them had never been on good terms with Haku and knew little about him on a personal level, Keitaro seemed more than happy to welcome the boy to their safe house. Naruto preferred Haku's company to the terrifying loneliness of being locked inside the safe house. Naruto discovered Haku's tragic past through his conversations with him. A past that brought back memories of Naruto's own lonely life in Konoha. Haku revealed several other details about the battle on the bridge to Naruto and Keitaro. All of the bandits Gato had brought with him were killed, either by fighting or drowning. Sasuke was still alive and well, much to Naruto's dismay. Haku stated that he had no intention of killing anyone that day, particularly a child. Instead of killing Sasuke, Haku used a combination of precision reflexes and Zabuza's training to strike Sasuke's pressure points, knocking the young Uchiha out. However, there were a few unexpected details, the result of poor planning and a bad turn of events. That day, construction on the bridge came to an abrupt halt. Although the bridge builder's life was no longer in danger, there was concern for his daughter and grandson. They were abducted by two of Gato's hired goons and had been missing since. According to what was understood, the bridge builder was told that no harm would come to them as long as bridge construction did not continue. This was bad news for Naruto because it meant the Konoha nin wouldn't be leaving for a while. To add to the confusion, Gato Corporation had been subjected to a barrage of public scrutiny and internal strife. With Gato no longer alive and no one in line to take his place, many of the company's assets vanished. Furthermore, the feudal lord of the Land of Waves became aware of the corporation's crimes and imposed a large fine as well as seizing the majority of its property. Soon after, Gato Corporation was forced to declare bankruptcy, and nearly 2 billion ryu went missing. To make matters worse, the remnants of Gato's regime were embroiled in civil war. His subordinates had split up into their own gangs, each with their own agenda. Although each of these gangs claimed to be their own legitimate syndicate, their actions had no bearing on the Ninkyo Dantai's principle. Many of these gangs went around killing and stealing for personal gain. They pretended to be and were Basuzoku. Although it was difficult for Naruto to admit it, the Land of Waves was probably in better shape when Gato was in charge. Naruto heard Keitaro walk through the front door, followed by hurried footsteps upstairs. A knock came at his door seconds later. Naruto, "It's dinner time." "All right," Naruto replied. He got out of bed and walked upstairs to the main floor. Keitaro had set out 3 plates and bowls, as well as rice balls, egg rolls, fried fish, shrimp, and red bean soup. Haku was also present, dressed in an unusual pink kimono. "Hello, Naruto," Haku said, catching Naruto's eye. Naruto responded with a quiet nod, as he was too taken aback by the kimono to say anything. Although Naruto would never admit it, Haku had an odd sense of fashion. "Itadakamasu," he said as he took his seat. Naruto began eating the soup as Keitaro took his seat on the other side of the table. He sighed deeply and began to eat some of the egg rolls. He didn't appear to be himself today. "Are you okay?" Naruto inquired. "No," Keitaro said, shaking his head. "Do you mind if I ask why?" Naruto pressed the button. "You're going either way," Keitaro quickly responded. "I spent all day trying to keep this village under control. Since Gato's subordinates split up and formed their own gangs, they've been fighting each other for the title of top gang in the country. To make matters worse, other syndicates have learned of Gato's death and are seizing this opportunity to stake their claim." "Are there other syndicates?" Naruto's eyes widened. Naruto was aware that other syndicates besides the Kurohi existed, but he did not anticipate their involvement. He turned to look at Haku, hoping for an explanation, but was met with a blank stare. Naruto could never get over Haku's ability to laugh at even the most serious of situations. This was especially true when Zabuza died, a fact that Haku had taken almost forgetfully. It was creepy, about as creepy as his love of wearing women's clothes. "We might lose the Land of Waves," Naruto Keitaro sighed, bringing Naruto out of his train of thought. Naruto saw the horror in Keitaro's eyes. It was obvious he was none too pleased with the turn of events. "It's probably for the better." Naruto slammed his fist on the table, which caught both Keitaro and Haku's attention. He didn't like the sound of resignation in Keitaro's voice. It was so unlike Keitaro. Naruto stood up and said, "You're just going to give in like that and let those guys take over the entire country? What about all these people? Don't they mean anything?" Keitaro shook his head. "It's politics, Naruto. It's of my hands." "Out of your hands," Naruto retorted. "It's not that hard to just go out there and stop them. It's more complicated than that. Just because we look like we do whatever we want doesn't mean we aren't without law," Keitaro explained. "There's more to this lifestyle than flashy clothes and weapons. Trust me, what you think you know about us is just the tip of the iceberg." "What are you saying?" Naruto never felt so angry. "You're going to let them take over the country because you want to listen to some stupid law? Drop it," Keitaro shouted at Naruto. Keitaro picked up his plate and walked into the kitchen. He dropped the plate into the sink and walked downstairs. "Clean up when you're done." Naruto grumbled and sank down into his chair. Keitaro was being evasive again, but was it for the same reason or a different one? Now that Naruto thought about it, Keitaro always seemed to be restricted by politics. But that was only because Keitaro was a member of the Kurohi Syndicate. Naruto, on the other hand, was not a Kurohi. There were no politics holding Naruto back. It was then that Naruto conceived what could be called his greatest idea to date. It wasn't as classy as Keitaro's plan, or as suave. Truthfully, it was blunt and completely dangerous. But wasn't that the same reason it could be considered fun? Still, Naruto would need some help. He turned to Haku and said, "Hey Haku, do you still have your ninja gear?" Haku was surprised by Naruto's sudden question but answered with a curt nod. Naruto smiled approvingly. "Okay. When you're done eating, can you go get your stuff together? Do you have something in mind?" Haku asked. Naruto expected Haku's response and calmly answered, "We're going hunting." Haku seemed to understand what Naruto had in mind and went downstairs immediately. Naruto took the dishes and brought them into the sink to wash them. After cleaning the plates and wiping the table, Naruto ran downstairs into his bedroom. In his room, he opened the top drawer of his dresser and pulled out his blue cloak and rice hat. Naruto donned the clothes quickly and picked up Kitsune, which lay on his bed. Naruto raced out of the room quickly and ran upstairs to find Haku waiting for his patiently. Haku adorned his kimono and mask as before, even tying his hair into a knot at the back of his head. Oddly, Haku's newest addition to his armament was Zabuza's large sword. "Ready to go?" Naruto asked. "Yes." Naruto nodded and led the way out of the safe house. It was already dark out. It was quiet outside. There were no lights or people. It made sense since the village was caught in a crippling state of anarchy. The fact that the anarchy was his fault only encouraged Naruto to carry out his plan. Without a word, he raced down the street and into the night. Hinata flew from rooftop to rooftop. Ever since Tsunami and Inari were kidnapped, Kakashi-sensei had ordered Sakura and Hinata to scan the village for any sign of the two. A week's search turned up nothing, however. Truthfully, Tezuna was slowly losing hope that the two of them were alive. Hinata had done her best to keep the old man's hopes alive, but couldn't keep him out of his sorrow. She could only imagine his suffering, first losing his son-in-law to Gato and then losing his daughter and only grandson. It must have been heartbreaking. Hinata, however, swore to the old man she wouldn't let anything happen to them and that she would keep her word. It was her ninja way. "I will never go back on my word." She stopped at the edge of town and activated her clan's special Kekkei Genkai, the Byakugan, hoping to find some trace of Tsunami and Inari. A quick scan of the area was fruitless, showing nothing except sleeping villagers. She was a little jealous of their sound sleep, dreaming comfortably in their beds. Her eyes drooped, longing to close. But she couldn't sleep now, not when Inari and Tsunami were missing. Maybe a small break wouldn't hurt. She lied down on the roof and let her eyelids sink down. Two fast-moving figures entered her Byakugan's field of vision, which she dismissed as two kids out looking for trouble. One of them wore a rice and a dark blue cloak, the other in a blue kimono and a mask marked with the symbol of Kirigakuyor. Her eyes shot open and she jumped to her feet. The second figure was undoubtedly Haku, but Hinata couldn't place a name to the first. He was too short to be Zabuza and didn't move nearly as fast. But the blue cloak and rice hat were disturbingly familiar. Who could it be? She needed to alert Kakashi-sensei, in case they were too strong for her. At the same time, she couldn't afford to let them get away, since they might lead her to Inari and Tsunami. Hinata groaned at her predicament and went with the only logical option: follow them. As quietly as she could, Hinata leaped down into the street below and shadowed the duo. Naruto and Haku had not gone too far before he found what he was looking for. A small group of hoodlums, ones he recognized from Gato's compound, were gathered in an alley smoking what appeared to be cigarettes and drinking beer. There were 7 of them in total, all drunk from the alcohol consumption. A small moan escaped the end of the alley. To Naruto's amazement, a little boy in a sun hat and overalls was among them. He was tied up in ropes and left by some of the trash cans. Approaching them with a head-on attack wouldn't work in their favor, especially since they outnumbered Naruto and Haku. He couldn't talk them down since they probably held a grudge against him for killing Gato. He could leave and go find another gang of Gato's former subordinates, but they couldn't just leave the kid there. With that in mind, Naruto quietly whispered to Haku, "Follow my lead." Haku nodded in understanding, silently accepting the order. The Naruto entered the alley and lowered the rice hat to hide his face, Haku following close behind. He had only gone 2 paces into the alley before one of the grunts caught sight of the duo. With the alcohol coursing through his veins and impairing his judgment, the drunkard stupidly said, "What do you want?" The boy at the end of the alley propped his head up at the words, a hopeful look on his face. His gaze lingered on Naruto before sinking back down. There was something peculiar about the boy. He reminded Naruto of someone he knew, but who was it? "Which one of you is in charge?" Naruto asked, his hand reaching for his katana. The drunk burped loudly and wiped his mouth. "Who wants to know?" The drunk wore a nice black suit which was unkempt for some odd reason and covered in a thin layer of dirt. His tie was undone and his white dress shirt was untucked. His slacks hung from his waist with his belt buckled loosely around his waist. The man's hair was also a mess, resembling a bird's nest rather than hair. "I do," Naruto answered. The drunkard laughed, and the others soon joined him. "You, a brat." He fell backwards, howling loudly with laughter. Naruto's face contorted at the shrewdness of the man's mockery, and turned to look at Haku. Haku shook his head quietly. Naruto waited silently as the laughter died down. He opened his mouth to talk, but was stopped by the drunkard. "Tell you what, kid is, I'm in a good mood so I'm willing to let you go. Just turn around and walk away." Not without the boy, Naruto answered hastily. The man looked back at the boy and drew his katana. No can do. See, this kid is the bridge builder's grandson. As long as we have this kid, we have the bridge builder. Now why don't you go run along? The man was clearly too drunk to think clearly. Otherwise he would not have told Naruto that information. The kid was the grandchild, so where was the mother? Naruto would have to concern his mind with that later since the band of hoods were slowly surrounding Naruto. Naruto's hand tightened around the hilt of his katana, itching to draw it and cut the hoodlums where they stood. But Naruto knew better. He loosened his hold on the katana and calmly said, "There's no honor in holding a little kid hostage." Naruto didn't care if that was true. It made a lot of sense. The man didn't take it too kindly though. Naruto must have touched a nerve with that comment because in a matter of seconds the man had drawn a knife and dived at Naruto. Grabbing Kitsune in his hand, Naruto drew the weapon and thrust it forward into the man's stomach. Grahhh. He howled in pain. Naruto pulled the katana out of the man's gut and pushed him to the ground. It was then and there that Naruto had done the opposite of his trademark smile. It was a cold, heartless glare that Naruto had never used before. To Naruto's surprise, the hoods actually started backing away from him. "Get him, you!" their wounded companion choked, blood oozing out of his mouth. "Shut up," Naruto ordered dangerously. He raised Kitsune and stabbed the man's temple. The blade ran cleanly through to the other side of his head. The other hoodlums grabbed their weapons and rushed forward. Haku responded immediately by raising a menagerie of ice-like mirrors that surrounded the gangsters. Each mirror held the reflection of Haku, who toyed with senbon needles between his fingers. Realizing what he had just done, Naruto released his hold of Kitsune. What was he thinking? Naruto tried his best to hide his surprise, lowering his hat to hide the guilty look on his face. What was he going to do? Maybe he should have thought his plan out better. His mind reeled. His heart raced. This was the point of no return. If he backed down now, then they would kill him. If these hoods didn't do it, the Konoha shinobi clearly would. He had no choice. He had to go ahead with his plan. He tried to relax himself by thinking about ramen and its alluring aroma. He could actually begin to taste the broth in his mouth, the luscious smell filling his lungs, the texture of the noodles on his mouth. It was sumptuous, perfectly relaxed. Naruto calmly said, "I'll say this again. Who's in charge here?" The hoods exchanged worried glances. None of them dared to speak for one reason or another. He rolled his eyes at their silence. Clearly, they would rather die than answer his question. Donning the most aggressive face he could create, Naruto slid Kitsune out of the dead man's skull and wiped it on his cloak. "This can work two ways. Tell me who's in charge or I can have my friend here kill all of you." He was in charge. One of them finally spat out, pointing at the dead man. This hood was adorned in a white hooded shirt and dark blue pants. Naruto smiled nervously. "Is that a fact?" The man nodded. Naruto smiled dangerously. "Good." Naruto walked into the heart of the alley and calmly proclaimed, "I'm taking over this group. Are there any problems with that? Why should we listen to you?" Another said threateningly. Naruto motioned to Haku. Almost immediately, Haku buried the man in a hail of senbon needles. "That is why you should listen to me," Naruto warned. There was a quick shift in their attitudes. These men were clearly not the most loyal group, nor the most courageous. Without uttering a word, they all fell to their knees and bowed to Naruto. Even though Naruto knew he couldn't show emotion, he couldn't help but smile at his victory apparent. There was, however, one difference in this smile. Although Naruto thought he was using his trademark smile, what the hoodlums saw was menacing and terrifying. The silence held for a few moments before one of the hoods asked, "Would I be wrong to ask our new master's name?" Naruto almost hit his head at his stupidity, formalities and all, but was now faced with a new dilemma. He needed a name. He couldn't give his name because he was technically dead. He needed a name that fit him, but gave no clue to his identity. Then it struck him. Slowly, he said, "You may call me Kitsune." "Boss Kitsune," the subordinates said in unison, disdainfully instead of respectfully, "we pledge our allegiance to you." Naruto's face remained impassive. They weren't loyal, pledging their allegiance to Naruto only because he proved he was stronger than their leader. He would need to find a way to truly win their loyalty, otherwise he would have to kill them. Hopefully he could do the former before the latter became necessary. Hinata gasped in horror, unable to believe what had just happened. Although she had finally caught up with Haku and his accomplice, she quickly regretted following them. To her dismay, Haku's accomplice was one Uzumaki Naruto. Hinata's faith in Naruto had never staggered until now. That day Naruto was branded a Yakuza. Hinata was the only person in the whole village who refused to accept it. Even Iruka-sensei, Naruto's favorite teacher and vice versa, believed Naruto chose a life as a criminal over a noble life as a shinobi. Hinata never accepted that. But her eyes did not deceive her. They could not deceive her. She wanted so desperately to believe it was a cruel genjutsu. But it wasn't. No genjutsu could fool the Byakugan. Hinata covered her mouth and wiped her eyes to hide her tears. Naruto, with the help of Haku, had killed another man and taken control of his gang. Why? How? No one could know about this. If someone found out that Naruto was still alive and was a gangster, she couldn't let it happen. Without another second's hesitation, Hinata ran. She ran far away, hot tears streaming down her cheeks and into the night.
So this was it for today. I will continue the story in next part. Till then, we weeb offline.